Okay, the one-line elevator pitch. This novel, The Frozen River, is the story of Martha Ballard, who was a real midwife in Maine in the 1700s. And there are three things that you need to know about her. The first is that she delivered over 1,000 babies in the course of her career, and she never lost a mother in childbirth. She had a 100% survival rate. And I don't personally know an OBGYN that can boast a record like that. Certainly none of the ones that I went to could boast that record. The second thing you need to know about Martha Ballard is that she was the great aunt of Clara Barton, founder of the American Red Cross. And she was the great grandmother of Mary Hobart, who was one of the first female physicians in the United States. So the medical legacy that she left is truly unparalleled. And it is a shame that we don't know her name, that she's not a household name. And then the third thing is that Martha Ballard kept a diary for 30 years at a time when most women could not read or write. And in that diary, she recorded every birth, every death, every murder, and every scandal that happened in the town of Hallowell, Maine. And it is the contents of that diary that inspired this novel.
That was more than one line. So I know that the seeds of this novel came to you when you defiled a book in your obstetrician's waiting room. You tore a page out of a small book that you came upon. Tell us about that.
I will tell you that story, but first I have to clarify because I got yelled at about tearing that page out. It was a disposable. It's meant to be thrown away after 3 months. It was a devotional. So it's 3 months worth of devotions. You read the one for the day and you chuck it in the trash. So I didn't technically defile it, even though I did steal the page. But I was in my doctor's waiting room. I was pregnant with our fourth son. My husband and I had, he didn't have them. I had them. Boys in 5 years. It was a lot. It remains a lot. And I was in the doctor's office for an appointment. I was about 6 months pregnant and my doctor was late. And it is not an exaggeration to say that had he been on time, this novel would have never been written. He was really late. He had gotten stuck at the hospital with a really tricky delivery. So I was stranded in his waiting room and I had two choices. I could reschedule and go home, but there were 3 children there.
This was your me time, right?
Yes, and I did not currently miss the children. My husband was watching them, so most likely nobody was going to die. Or I could stick it out, and that's what I chose to do. I decided that, he can't be that long. I'll just wait for him. Well, hours later, I had finished the book that I brought with me. It was Stardust by Neil Gaiman. If you haven't read it, I'm sure they have it here, and it's wonderful. And then I read all the magazines in the office. And then there was nothing left to read at all but this pile of really scary pamphlets in the corner. And I was flipping through those, and underneath was a devotional. It was called Our Daily Bread. They have them in Texas and doctor's offices all the time. And I flipped to that date, August 8, 2008, and I read the story of a woman named Martha Ballard who had delivered over 1,000 babies and never lost a mother. And I remember thinking, oh, that would make a great novel. I ripped the page out and I put it in my purse. And I kid you not, my doctor walked in 2 minutes later.
So Martha is a midwife. She's supremely confident in her knowledge, not just of delivering babies, but pretty much in all matters of health and life. She is a very strong woman, and she's such a great role model to her children, and she rarely doubts her own judgment. And I was wondering, what were some of the factors that allowed her to be this confident and bold in an age where women were not full citizens and many of them were illiterate and viewed as property of their husbands?
It's a great question. I think part of it, and the part we don't talk about, is Martha's 54 years old in this novel. And something happens once you're around the corner of 40. Like, you're just going to say it like it is. You're going to speak your mind. So a lot of that confidence comes from being mature. A lot of it comes from the fact that she spent 30 years delivering babies. She knows what she's doing. But also, just as importantly, Martha had a legal standing that most women did not enjoy at this time. So during the years that Martha Ballard lived, you could not testify in court without the presence of your husband or your father, unless you were a midwife, in which case the law allowed you to go to court and testify in issues of paternity and child support. And when I was researching this book, I thought, well, she couldn't have used that much. This was 50 years post-Puritan era. Plot twist. 4 in 10 first pregnancies were conceived out of wedlock during the years that Martha practiced midwifery. 1 to 2 in 10 were born outside of wedlock, so you had a lot of shotgun weddings and a lot of 10-pound premature babies. Billy's not due for 3 months, but here he is, and he weighs 8.5 pounds. Turns out Martha used that privilege quite a bit. There was a law on the books in Massachusetts at the time. Maine was still a district of Massachusetts. It was not even a state, but the law was titled a law for the punishment of fornication and the maintenance of bastard children. And in theory, it was designed so that if a woman had a baby out of wedlock, she could collect child support. In practice, it was a way of public shaming. These women would have to go before the court. They would have to tell who the father was, and then they would have to pay a fine or possibly spend a night in jail. Keep in mind, the law made no provision for the fathers. They could go to the judge, fess up, go on their way. There was no punishment for them. So Martha spent a great deal of her time in court defending these women, sometimes lobbying for lower fines. There were times that she paid the fines herself if a young mother couldn't do so. So when you read this woman who does present as very confident and sure of herself in this novel, that part's not fiction. She was incredibly confident in her vocation, but she was confident in the justice that she was trying to seek for the women around her. And she'd spent her entire career serving the women of her community. And that comes through on the pages of her diary.